Thank you, right on there. Be completely happy. Before I die, I want to
be completely happy.
I'm Elisa Parker, and we are broadcasting here from the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. It is the largest film festival of its kind in the United States, maybe even the world. We've been actually connecting with amazing people featured in the films, creating the films, and bringing them to really cool parts of Nevada City, Grass Valley, and the Film Fest. I have Marilyn Schlitz here, and she created the beautiful film Death Makes Life Possible. What was it even that inspired you to create this film in the first place? When you think about anything that you could create a film about, why around this?
I think that we define ourselves oftentimes by our limitations. I think fear can be one of those limitations, and I think one of the greatest sources of fear is death. And so how can we liberate ourselves in order to be truly happy, in order to live life to its fullest? And I think an important thing in that process is learning to understand our own mortality and to redefine death so that we can transform fear into an inspiration for living.
What is your own personal background and interest around this? I mean, I know there's more to it when you did this film, and you actually co-produced with Deepak Chopra, which is also a big deal. So first of all, though, tell me about your own background.
Well, I'm an anthropologist by training, and so I have a deep regard and appreciation for culture and diverse cultures. And one of the great mysteries for me is how it is that so many people can be walking around sharing the same stores or, going to the same hospitals, schools, whatever it happens to be, and yet they hold different models of reality. And so how is it that we're coexisting and yet living in different models of what is possible? And so that's intriguing to me and has been a lifelong interest.
Yeah. What is it about death, Marilyn, that you think, especially in America, that has us so afraid of it? Because obviously life and death coexist with each other. Right now it's January, so we look around at the trees, right? And everything's dying, but we also know that pretty soon other things will be blossoming. What is it that we're so afraid of in the United States around this?
Well, one of the things we've lost is a worldview or a metaphysic that really sees ourselves embedded in the natural cycle of life. So when we separate ourselves from the natural rhythms, we alienate ourselves. And so I think that's a big challenge for Western civilization generally. I think that there is a long-standing and ubiquitous fear around death. It's not just here. People want to live forever. They're afraid of what they don't know. And so one of the things we've done in this film is to explore different cosmologies or worldviews around death and what people think is going to happen next, with the idea that that can empower them to live more fully.
There's an amazing man in your film who, it's right towards the beginning of the film of Death Makes Life Possible, where he announces that he's going to be dying shortly. He was diagnosed. What was he diagnosed with?
He had a cancer, esophageal cancer.
So how did you even connect with each other? I mean, it almost seemed serendipitous that he was in the film and you see the cycle with him of his passing, and then he does this beautiful memorial that he had recorded with all of his friends once he had passed.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of being a researcher in the area of consciousness studies, mind-body medicine, and worldview transformation. Those are kind of the areas. And Lee Lipsenthal, who also wrote a beautiful book called Enjoy Every Sandwich, was a physician, was a visionary in that interface of mind-body. And he and I were old friends, and he was always somebody very, very supportive of this kind of exploration. And one of the beautiful things about this board, what I want before I die, is that many people put it off. And I think Lee's advocating enjoy every sandwich, enjoy every minute. And so being able to celebrate his life by featuring him in the film seemed appropriate, and it also, he has a great dramatic arc, and so we were able to follow him.
It must have been just on a personal level really, in some ways, anytime we lose anyone, it can be heart-wrenching as well.
Grief is a natural part of our process, and I think people really need to explore it, understand it, know that it expresses itself in different ways. But I think to the extent we can deal with our own fears around mortality and confront them, engage them, we can be less fearful and ultimately more joyful. Our attitudes, our perspectives, our beliefs all have the capacity to limit us or to empower us to live more fully. And so that's really, the gift, I think, of this film. There's a companion book that'll be coming out in May that will support it. And one of the things we look at in there is what's called terror management theory. There was a man named Ernest Becker who wrote a book called The Denial of Death. And in it, he talks about how the kind of social pathologies we experience where people are in conflict with one another, whether it's what's going on in terms of, France, Paris right now, and the terrorism. We're terrorized by terror, and that comes with some deep fear, existential fear about our mortality. So to the extent people can bolster their own self-worth in the context of understanding their mortality, I think we can begin to shift this vilification of the other and begin to broaden our sense of interconnectedness, because we're all part of a common family.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on too with self-worth and being interconnected to each other and feeling connected. I think that's what happens and develops the fear is we start to feel disconnected from each other, hence disconnected from ourselves, right? And there's a fear around disconnecting in the big way of actually dying and leaving our bodies.
And one of the things for me is, what is the root cause of that?
Yeah,
so
where does
we
that
can
start?
look at, in this context of this wonderful festival, all the environmental issues that we're grappling with. There's still a root cause. And I believe a big part of that is this worldview that Western culture holds, that there is an objective world out there, and somehow we're separate from that. So if you can begin to turn that and recognize that we're not separate, we're fundamentally interconnected, then when somebody chops down a tree in the rainforest, or there's a child starving in an inner city, it's our responsibility. It's no longer about them, it's about we. And so that shift from the me to the we becomes fundamental to, I think, shifting the whole paradigm.
That is so true. And Marilyn, I've been asking everyone this. I asked you last night, we were doing radio interviews at KVMR, doing those live. So what's the wildest thing you've ever done to make a difference?
Well, I think really inviting people to question their own assumptions about death is pushing some thresholds for people. And so inviting them to do that in a way that comforts them rather than triggers the panic is pretty wild and pretty fun.
And my last thing, if you can complete the statement, I'm wild for.
I'm wild for the freedom to explore these ideas in a community of people that are so engaging and open-hearted.
All right, Marilyn. Marilyn, thank you so much. The film is called Death Makes Life Possible. What do you want to do? What do you want to do before you die? Marilyn wants to be completely happy. I'm going to have to think about what do I want to do before I die as well. It's a great thing, and you can come and fill it out next time you come to the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. I'm Elisa Parker. It's always great hanging out with you, and thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Marilyn.
Thank you.